Welcome to Unsupervised Learning, Redpoint's AI podcast. I'm Patrick Chase. I'm joined by Jacob Efron. Today, we spoke with Alexandru Costin, the VP of Generative AI and Sensei at Adobe. Alexandru started his career as an entrepreneur. He founded InterAKT, which was acquired by Adobe 18 years ago. We talk about how Adobe is building AI into their suite of products.
You actually don't even have to type in a prompt. When you click generate, we're going to use the rest of the image as an implied prompt and generate something that matches.
He explains how Adobe is leveraging their millions of users to refine their models.
Our terms of use allow us to store the prompts and the generated images and use them in training, which is basically our way of doing RLHF.
And finally, Alexandru shares his vision for Adobe's Creative Cloud in 10 years.
We see Creative Cloud evolving into enabling our customers become from visual designers to more like creative directors of these meta experiences that will be then hyper-personalizable.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Alexandru, I looked this up. Fun fact, the day you started at Adobe, Adobe's market cap was $11.9 billion. Today, their market cap is $237 billion. So pretty incredible run over the 18 years. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited about this.
Happy to be here. And yes, it's I did help a little bit, but it's 30,000 people doing hard work at Adobe, serving our customers that got our stock where it is today.
I had kind of figured that it was you that had created you solely that had created the 200. I'm struggling with the math now. 210 billion in enterprise value. But yeah, maybe to start it off, can you tell us a little bit about your incredible journey at Adobe and some of the projects you've worked on there?
Yeah, happy to do so. So originally from Romania, I had InterAKT, as you said, a small startup doing plugins for Macromedia Dreamweaver. And when Adobe, and we were a Macromedia partner doing things for them, doing a lot of PHP development. When Adobe acquired Macromedia, they sent, the Macromedia folks sent Adobe to us. Adobe was interested in opening up a center in Eastern Europe. They found us. We had amazing web expertise. So they acquired our company and I ended up leading the Romania site, Adobe Romania, for 10 beautiful years and started doing AI even in Romania, but my trajectory kind of accelerated towards AI throughout the years.
Amazing. Incredible background. And maybe just for our listeners, could you walk through kind of some of the AI products now? There's obviously Sensei and a bunch of incredible things that you guys are doing with AI at Adobe, like Firefly and some of those other things. But maybe can you walk through the kind of suite of AI products and projects at Adobe?
Of course. So Adobe has three big business units. There is the Creative Cloud business unit, the Document Cloud business unit, then the Experience Cloud business unit. And each of them is the Creative Cloud. We have Photoshop, we have Illustrator, Adobe Express, many products for content creation and authoring. The Document Cloud is the acq'd franchise, and the Experience Cloud, we have various content management, is commerce solution, analytics, and data, CRM data hosting for various enterprise customers. And AI is part of all of those, part of the products in each of those business units. In Creative Cloud, we train models on what we call the Sensei platform. This is our internally homegrown and using various public clouds, but homegrown infrastructure that enable hundreds of researchers to train various models that then are tech transferred into Photoshop, into Adobe Express, etc. And things like the masking, auto masking in Photoshop, things like content-aware fill, things like object detection in Photoshop or neural filters. These are some of the capabilities that are already deployed in Photoshop with AI. In Document Cloud, in acq'd, we have this capability called liquid mode that enable mobile. We use it AI to reflow documents on mobile phones so you can read archive papers easier. That's actually a pretty nice hint for everybody that's following AK on Twitter and reads archive paper every day. This liquid mode is a really nice way to read them on a phone every morning. If you're and in the Experience Cloud, we have various AI capabilities to do anomaly detection in analytics, to do content generation, marketing, content brand generation in Adobe Experience Manager, which is our CMS, etc. So throughout the years, actually Sensei started in 2016, and throughout the years, we've been doing a lot of those smaller models integrated in various workflows. Then last year, we've decided to embrace these larger models as diffusion models and LLMs kind of showed that the quality of the content generated, the quality of the content summarization, it all increased. We've decided to fully embrace large models, both large language models and large diffusion models, and create the Firefly suite of models that now we've launched in March. We've been working for a year or so and is doing really great. We've launched as beta. It's not yet out of beta, but even during the beta, we have more than 1 billion images generated across multiple surfaces. We have the firefly.adobe.com website. We have this deep integration in Photoshop called Generative Fill. We have integration in Adobe Express, which is our marketer / communicator suite, design suite. So throughout all of, and in Illustrator, it's gonna be integrated everywhere. But even through this initial wave of integrations, we've seen tremendous success and customers being super excited about what the Firefly models can do for them, enabling them to be more productive and creative.
That's incredible. I mean, it's an amazing overview, and just the scope of what you guys have done with AI, I think is really impressive. And I feel, I don't know, you see a lot of the demos with Photoshop and things like that, which are very, they're very sexy and people get them and they make for great demos. But it's really fascinating to hear about, not just the AI stuff you guys are doing in Photoshop, but also across all of the different pillars of the business. Is really fascinating. I guess would love to talk a little bit about kind of specifically on Photoshop, because I think that is something that's really top of mind for people. You mentioned 1 billion photos generated. I think it was maybe the CEO of Microsoft or someone that was saying that GitHub, 40% of the new code checked in is now being generated by AI. Like, do you have a sense of kind of what proportion of design is now being done by AI, or how you see those workflows changing now that you've launched a bunch of these features?
I'll share our strategic perspective. As we haven't gotten out of beta, the Firefly content is not yet usable for commercial purposes. It will be soon when we launch. But even with that, so we could say this 1 billion images were people playing with it and trying to get and give us feedback. Throughout this last 4 decades of Adobe history, we've helped our customers navigate various waves of technological disruption in content production, even starting with the first wave, which was digital publishing. Actually, Adobe was maybe the key leader in inventing the PostScript format and laser printing. And at the time, moving publishing to computer or digital publishing, this was a big transition that we have led. And at the time, there were a lot of questions about what will happen with jobs of the people doing normal publishing. But throughout this transition, digital publishing, and then we had digital photography, we had the internet, we had the mobile wave. Throughout each of those waves at the innovation, we have seen the same pattern apply, the same pattern where content creation gets cheaper and easier to do and more accessible to a larger audience. But this, which triggers the concerns for the creators about the role of their job security, the role they will play in this new world, etc. But with every transition, what happens is the demand for digital content or for content in general increases exponentially, increases more than the decreases in cost of creating content. So because of that, we've actually seen for every transition, we've seen an opportunity for our customers that we serve through various product lines to become relevant, stay relevant in this new world, and actually embrace the new technology, don't be disrupted by it, and become 10x more productive or creative. So I assume that behind your question, a lot of content will be touched by AI. We do believe content will be touched by AI one way or another. Fully generated, we don't think it's going to be fully automated. We actually do believe deeply that creative people will stay to be the ones in control of both the creation process and the curation of the content being generated. But in the same time, demand will grow exponentially. So we think that customers embracing AI will continue to stay relevant. And this is what we're trying to do, because we do think most content will be touched by some AI technology. It already is. In Photoshop, if you select something, you're already using some GANs most of the time, or selection models, maybe not generative models, but you're already using AI. And with capabilities like generative fill in Photoshop, you generate pixels and but it's through the process of editing a photo. So even if you're not generating a full new kind of art, you're editing a photo, you're using Gen AI. So mostly through editing and through some generation too, we think that the majority of the content will be touched by AI, and we need to embrace it. Our customers need to embrace it to stay relevant in this new world.
Totally. And I think, obviously you've had these features, even though they're already in beta, they're used really widely. I imagine as you were developing them, there were all sorts of like interesting design decisions you had to make about how to like incorporate them into the product. And I think this is something that so many people are trying to figure out right now in kind of the broader AI world. I'd love to hear from you about maybe if there's some specific ones that come to mind where you guys were toying with different ways these could be incorporated into the existing product suite, and how it kind of came to take the form that it does today.
Great question. So we do, as you know, Photoshop, we have maybe too many controls and knobs and capabilities that were added throughout the 3+ decades history of the product. So it's like some people say that the cockpit of a Boeing 747. So it can take you to fly anywhere, but it's like really powerful, but you need to know how to master it. And there's a lot of mastery that goes into building up knowledge about how to use Photoshop. And when we've seen some of those GANs, actually part of my history with Firefly is I was leading this project called Neural Filters. So even before generative and diffusion models became so good, GANs were the best of breed 3-4 years ago. And this is when we've decided we saw the power in GANs, the power of using AI to basically reinvent the content authoring process. Because even GANs, they're very controllable with user intent. You can make somebody smile. I'm not sure if you guys remember some of the demos we had for Neural Filters. We have a feature called Smart Portrait that can change the yaw of somebody or make somebody smile or age them or de-age them. And instead of normally you would do this in Photoshop using adjustment layers and pixel manipulation. It's a very complicated manual process, but what we've started to introduce with Neural Filters was a intent-driven editing where the GAN would understand the scene, and then you would have some sliders, like a smile slider, an age slider, a yaw slider, and those sliders already kind of introduced a new very user-friendly editing paradigm that we're still very proud of, because we think it's interactive and it's very delightful. So we've been toying with innovation in user experience for a while, and when we saw prompt-based user interfaces, they do lower the entry barrier massively, even for folks that don't know how to use Photoshop, and just by expressing in an English sentence or any language sentence what you want to create, something is created for you. And we've embraced it too, and we started playing with it. The reality is our customer base, they do expect more control than just a prompt. So when we think about where those user experiences would land, we think it's going to be a mix of language with pointing and sliders. I don't think we've reached the end state of where the human computer interaction for creativity will reach, because we do think when you just type something, normally most of the time you don't get what's in your mind, you get something else. So there's some frustration. I have a daughter, she's 11, Rebecca. First time I showed her Firefly, she started typing in things, and she said, "Yeah, this is not what I imagined. Why it's not working, Dad." It's like that. I couldn't know what's in her head when she was typing pink rabbit or whatever the particular scene was at the time. But I realized immediately, and of course we get that from customers a lot, especially from the pixel perfect audience that is the Photoshop customer, that they do want control, because they do know in their head what a good design is, how to describe beautiful, so they want to control it. So we're investing in both enabling the ease of use of dialogue, user-computer dialogue, and in the same time, more control mechanisms that would enable them to really create the art they want to create.
For the people that you've seen that like use it best or seem to really get it, like what kind of workflows do you see them use that are kind of maybe different than like traditional workflows?
I think actually the most interesting thing we've seen, and I'm going to make a self-driving car parallel here, but when we came up with the idea of using LLMs in Photoshop, etc., the first thing that comes to mind is to use an LLM to index help system about Photoshop, and then through a dialogue, guide the user to what do they need, what tools, existing tools they need to use to get to the output they need. But through our engagement with the Photoshop team, they actually stepped back and said, look, if we think about what a copilot is, like a copilot, because we always had this vision of building what we called it a creative assistant at times, or a creative copilot. What do people really want is to get to the end result, not to be instructed on how to use a complex tool to get to the end result. So I call it level 4 creativity. And with generative fill in Photoshop, for example, you select something, which is like selection is the most used feature in Photoshop. You select something aided by AI, and then you have a prompt where you can describe what you want to happen. You want to remove something that's remove a distractor, you want to insert an object, or you want to retouch a particular selection on the scene. And we've seen that interaction being the most natural. And through that interaction, actually, the customers along the whole spectrum of novices to professionals, they basically reach their destination sooner. It's like an Uber. You don't know necessarily, you don't have to know how to drive. You need to get to a particular destination. So what we've seen that impressed us more was the openness of the whole range of customers, from novices to professionals, to this copilot experiences that basically do the work for you. You're still in control. You're still guiding the computer. It's not like automated, but it's a change in the user, in the human computer interaction by this copilot. And we want to embrace it more. We think that intercepting some of our most frequent workflows in our products and bringing generative AI in context is a strategy that will make our customers more productive. And we're going to continue to do that along multiple modalities, from images to video to 3D vectors, etc.
Super interesting. And I guess, like, how have you thought about, like, obviously there's some folks that probably just get this intuitively right away, and they know exactly how to use these tools. And then I imagine there's obviously a big user education element to it too, right? And sometimes people come across like a blank prompt screen and they have no idea what to prompt or how to use it. And so how, obviously you have this like built-in user base that knows how to use tools in a certain way. How have you thought about like educating the user base and also solving that kind of like cold start problem of, what do I write for the first prompt?
Yeah, good point. So first, as I said, Firefly is integrated in across the segment of customers. So for consumers, we have firefly.adobe.com that targets basically either next generation creatives or people that are just not willing to spend the time to learn one of our tools. We have free tools too, but they just want to get the result fast. Then we have what we call the communicator segment, and we serve that with Adobe Express, which is a both design and video editing tool. Of course, integrates Firefly, but that enables, through the use of templates, the creation of a lot of fast social content, and to help these communicators or marketers stand out. Then we have the creative professional community. They use Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, depending on their medium of choice. And they're basically doing this as a job. And then we have enterprises that use a mix of those tools with some custom tools. We have tools like Workfront to help guide and manage teams of creatives. So across those 4 segments, they will have different levels of creative mastery. Like consumers, they're coming in all fresh. And for them, on firefly.adobe.com, we have an inspiration stream allowing them to remix existing prompts. We have curated actually from the community itself. When we launched firefly.adobe.com, we have a really powerful and very useful feedback mechanism. So the beta customers can tell us what they like, what they don't like. They can report bias issues, harm issues, etc. But they can also submit their own creations to the inspiration stream. So we have a process to handpick the best creations and then put them in the inspiration workstream. So new users are coming in and they basically immediately find something they like and they start riffing from it. This is a very important process. You click on something, you see the prompt, and then you can riff. Another thing we wanted to change in terms of promptology, I'm going to call it like that, is the fact that we see with other open source models or other models from that already exist that you need to write these very complicated prompts and use a lot of very complicated words or esoteric words to try to guide your creation in a particular style. So at Adobe, we're well known for our property inspectors and like Lightroom presets, etc. So which were very popular with photographer and with artists in general. So we thought about how can we actually use AI, some specific custom models we've created to bring this capacity of styling to Firefly without requiring you to write the style as a very convoluted prompt, like using 8K and the names of various 3D rendering engines, etc. So we've created the Adobe Style Engine. So if you go to firefly.adobe.com, on the right-hand side, you will see styles that you can pick. You will see light conditions, you'll see composition rules. So you can basically describe your scene by pre-selecting from a series of options that are curated by our design team that enable you to create easily and then the prompt is just a very simple sentence, and then you can play with those styles and create amazing outputs while preserving the style structure. So that's another advantage. Normally, if you change the prompt, you might lose the identity of the subject. So you lose your scene and you need to start from scratch. With the style engine, you keep your structure. If you found the perfect emotion on somebody's face, you keep that and you change the style. You can change it to a golden hour, and then the image is preserved, the person is preserved, but then the lighting changed to make the image more appealing. So that's what we're doing for the consumer segment. And of course, we're investing into prompt auto-completion models. We do want to bring in all of this knowledge we have from Adobe Stock, for example, where when you start typing, we do have this search auto-completion. So we're going to bring some of those models too for the consumer audience to give them guidance along the way. For the express customers, we think templates are their entry gateway. So they search for templates, and we're going to bring in generative capabilities in the templates themselves. So sometimes you search for a template, you find a template, the template will have a Firefly image generating in it, carrying in the prompt. So it's like an inspiration workstream, but it's more complex because it has compositing. So it has layers, it has effects, it has remove background. So it's going to be a little bit more complex, but that's what we're planning to do for communicators or marketers. Give them templates that are baked in with generative or AI capabilities that they immediately start to use intuitively. For the professionals, what we've seen with Photoshop Generative Fill, having this contextual bar. So we've introduced this contextual bar when you select. You don't even have to orient yourself in the UI. The contextual bar is there. It appears for every selection. It's right near the selection, and it has some contextual options depending on what you have selected. One of them is Generative Fill. And when you click Generative Fill, you actually don't even have to type in a prompt. When you click Generate, we're going to use the rest of the image as an implied prompt and generate something that matches. So you don't even have to think. But we haven't found, in particular for CPROs, creative professionals, we haven't found this dialogue to be complicated. For them, it's like a 10x easier. So they enjoy it, and it's more about prompt understanding and trying to collect feedback about how do they describe various actions so we react correctly to them. Because most of the time, instead of putting in an object, they will put in the full sentence, replace his face or her face with a blonde hair or something. So we need to do more in terms of LLM understanding of their actual sentence. And finally, for enterprises, we're also thinking of introducing those capabilities in context. For example, if you're in AEM, which is the Adobe Experience Manager or CMS, and you're writing a page or a blog prompt, we're going to introduce contextually recommendations on how to auto-generate some portions of that text, respecting your brand voice. So it's all about in-context introduction with various either databases of contents to help you orient or technologies to help you configure the prompt to generate what you want, and or other AI models to autocomplete your prompt. Those are the types of things we're doing across those 4 segments to help our customers create, onboard easier into this world.
It's something that we've heard across a bunch of domains is kind of like putting guardrails or templates or, giving people some guidance as they're working with the AI to create what they want to create, but it's really cool to hear about everything that you guys have done.
It is. And just to add to this, it's a very important point that for our enterprise customers in particular, one thing they obsess about, and for the right reason, is brand guideline compliance. So they want to make sure that content created either respects the company's brand, and or if you're in a particular campaign and you generate additional images, they have to respect the campaign brand because they might have sub brands. And this is where actually generative AI can play a key role, and we're investing in innovating in this space. How can we enable enterprises or the marketers or the creative department inside an enterprise create content that is automatically compliant with the brand? So you don't have to QA it a lot, and it's beautiful out of the gate. So we have some really nice innovation we're working on to really enable this content velocity problem, solve this content velocity problem while respecting the brand guidelines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can imagine, especially for someone that's at the scale that you're at, that trust and safety, and making sure that these generations, if you are generating a billion, photos or different types of generations, that trust and safety is top of mind. Can you say a little bit more about kind of how you guys go about solving that problem? Like whether it's on the modeling side, if you're training custom models, or maybe putting in different kind of checks and balances before you're sending a prompt. Like how have you guys thought about that?
Yeah, happy to do so. So trust and safety, or removing bias, or minimizing the chance harmful content can be generated, is top of mind for us. We do have a very high bar there. And for us, it all started with actually the data we train on. One of the things I didn't mention actually that is very important and is part of our differentiated Firefly strategy is we are training on data we have in our stock database of content. So we don't train Firefly models on data we scrape from the internet. We think this is raising concerns with our customers, the artists that feel that they don't have consent, control, or compensation for that. So training on data from Adobe Stock not only gives us high quality content, gives us the right to train on data that is stored in our marketplace, but also gives us reduced risk of IP infringement, reduced risk of actually harmful and biased content, because not bias, actually there is some bias. I'll talk about bias for a second, but harmful content, we just don't approve it in Adobe Stock. We do have a both automated and manual curation process that every asset submitted to Adobe Stock has to pass our content moderation process when it has some high bar in terms of what we accept in the marketplace. So because we train only on Adobe Stock, we can say that we're already in a good place in terms of reducing harmful content because we don't have like illegal content in there, and also reducing the potential of our customers generating infringing content that might infringe somebody else's IP. There is bias though, because it's a marketplace. We have various contributors from different countries all over the world, but there will be an inherent bias in the training data set. Like every data set is biased one way or another. And the actual process of training models is to teach the model the actual bias. So when we launched the first internal version of Firefly, text to image, we knew we will have some bias issues. And we had an internal Adobe test with tens of thousands of Adobe employees that came in and gave us a really good and healthy stress test about what were the areas we were not doing well on. And we had we discovered maybe 10 big problems. Fortunately, our research team was working on solutions for those. So we got this feedback actually in late February, and we launched in late March. That quarter from February 20th to March 20th was pretty intense because we enabled all of those research mechanisms that we've been working on to both reduce bias and reduce the harmful content. So one of the important things we did actually that we're very proud of, we built a person detector. We have a model that helps us understand if there's a person referenced in a prompt. And most of the time when you refer a person, you might refer it through a job. You could say a lawyer. And in a biased model, when you put in lawyer, you will get Caucasian, in their 60s males. That's basically kind of what the data set bias would teach the model to do. But we know that lawyers are actually across all skin tones, across multiple genders, and across all age ranges. So what we did is we detect people, we detect jobs, and we debias the actual content to introduce the right distribution of skin tones and the right distribution of genders and age groups from the country of origin of the request. So we actually have a database with what is the skin tone distribution in a various countries. So you always get a good representation, a fair representation of your country's distribution of skin tones. And of course, we do age and gender debiasing. So if you go to firefly.adobe.com and you type in one of those prompts, you will see that we actually generate very debiased results because we've invested significantly in making sure that we don't let the training data set bias permeate through the model. Similarly, for harm and bias, we have various toxicity detector models that we've trained to make sure we can differentiate various terms. And because we do wanna enable all ages, all age ranges to access Firefly, so we don't want to generate not safe for work content. And in order to do that, we have toxicity detectors, and we also have various deny lists and block lists. But more importantly, we do have also NSFW filters at the end of the generation. And another area that became evident through this internal testing was that children in particular, they need to be catered for. Specifically, you don't want to show children in relationship with tobacco, for example. So we've created various systems to help us detect a prompt that references children and then make sure we reduce the chance or basically avoid or do negative prompting to minimize the chances of generating by mistake something that's not okay in relationship with children. So a lot of both ML models and algorithms and rules that we've built during, again, that months to put us in a good place. And of course, we know this is not perfect. And this is why we have a very good feedback mechanism inside Firefly.adobe.com and inside Photoshop to enable customers to tell us when we basically give us new training data points for the rules and for for these models to help continue to bake it in and then refine the algorithm to reduce both biased content and harmful content. So I'm actually very proud of the work we did and we're continuing to do on this front. And it is, I would say, at the edge, at the frontier of technology, but we want to make sure that content generated by Firefly is usable commercially, and this is why we want to minimize NSFW content.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd love to ask you a little bit about the customer feedback mechanism. You were talking about it, and it seemed like there's a bunch of different ways that kind of customer data influences the models and the AI that you're building. Maybe one of them is, as you were talking about, the explicit feedback. It seemed like you're also gathering data from them, which then after this curation process goes into your data set that you're training on. And then also at the beginning, you were talking about the prompting and, maybe curating good prompts from the customers. But could you just kind of double click on some of the ways that customer data or customer feedback influences the models and AI?
Yeah. And just to start on this front, there was some Twitter controversy about us training on data customers storing in Creative Cloud, which we don't. So we never shipped models trained on customer data. This is handled customer data stored in Creative Cloud. That could be brands, next generation campaign. This is separated. We don't train on it. We train on Adobe stock, and we're adding museum and some other art or content with copyright expired. But on firefly.adobe.com, which is our community engagement website, we have our terms of use allow us to store the prompts and the generated images and use them in training, which is basically our way of doing RLHF. We think RLHF is essential to be able to create an aligned generative model. And RLHF comes in multiple shapes and forms. So we have this explicit signals like dislike, report that we take into account and we log. And also we have implicit signals like download or save or share. And those are also pretty strong signals that the customer liked a particular generation. So we're in the process right now for the next generation of Firefly models to integrate this feedback loop and basically teach the generation through a reinforcement learning to generate content we know users like most, and also avoid generating content that we know user disliked. So we're doing that for a future version of Firefly. But that's basically that we're using firefly.adobe.com as our RLHF system that gives us a lot of insights into what users like and don't like.
I mean, we've already hit. I feel like you guys have, obviously did so many things to make these models usable. Whether it was, training on your own data to avoid copyright issues, some of the guardrails on the brand voice, bias reduction, not safe for work filters, a lot of stuff we've talked about. You are like one of the only, folks that have really deployed these models at like large scale. So I am curious, like, is there, anything else you guys needed to build to make this like work at the scale that you've, I feel like we see all these demos all the time. And then the question is, well, what's required to actually put those into production? And so I'd love to hear from you about some of the other problems you guys had to solve to do that.
That's a great question. And we had a recent VP summit at Adobe, and I was asked, together with Eric Snowden, our VP of design, we were asked to present Firefly innovation at the speed of light. And because everybody was like, I moved under Eli Greenfield, the Adobe DME CTO and my current boss. I moved under him on January 12th, and then we shipped on March 20th. And everybody was like, this is just insanely fast for a large company. How do you make it happen? And my presentation was actually quite funny because I started my presentation showing the light moving at 1 trillion frames per second, and light actually moves quite slow. It filmed at 1 trillion frames per second. And the reality with building Firefly, we started a long time ago, and it wasn't called Firefly, and it wasn't the diffusion models, it was GANs, but we've started in the research organization in 2019. I was showing some screenshots. Gavin Miller is our head of research, and he invited me in 2019 to what he called an Adobe research retreat, where researchers, and I was in the business unit at the time, they present their latest discoveries and ideas for the business unit to connect to it. And I'll tell you more about how this tech transfer works if you're interested later on in this podcast. But I remember entering this room and seeing this researcher presenting something at the projector, something called GenShop, Generative Photoshop. And again, this was 2019, and the generation was through GANs. But I was looking at it, was like, wow, this is really something, and it looked unbelievably good. I mean, you can tell Photoshop what to do, and it understands, and it changes the pixels. It actually looked a little bit science fiction to me, but in terms of quality. But the vision was there. And then I reached out to the researcher, and I said, okay, let's work something. Let's make it happen. So together, we've set up what we call the neural filters team. And neural filters was this idea that inside Photoshop, we're going to accelerate the tech transfer, the productization of this research created AI models into the product and start engaging with customers. And this is how I think we've shipped almost or more than 100 models. They were small models, small GANs doing various things from colorization to JPEG artifact reduction to smart portrait to season changing. I mean, we did a lot of very creative things, but through the process, what we actually did, we were building up both the expertise, the customer engagement approach, and an amazing team that was capable of both training distributed models and doing optimized inference. Most of the neural filters actually run on device inside Photoshop using Core ML and WillML. But we've built this team that was ready when we've made the bet on generative AI in 2022. The team was there so we could start training larger models, and the team was there to build an optimized inference platform, because again, right now, these models are too big to be run on device and at the right level of quality. Of course, we're looking into it, but we're not there yet. So we run everything in the cloud, but we've capitalized on our deep understanding on how to run models fast. We were building, again, for neural filters, various, I would say, inference graphs that we basically deployed in the cloud. So we had a lot of technology. We had a team, we have a technology stack, we have knowledge. And again, in Adobe Research has, I think, 200 plus researchers. And every summer we welcome 300 PhDs, and they work with us to create the next generation of models. And we publish a lot of papers. But Adobe Research was always having a lot of ideas and models in play. And what we needed was just a productization arm. So when I moved under Eli, I moved with my team, and we've created this applied science and machine learning group, which is basically applied research. And we are now helping all these models from research be productizable. So both we refine them, we train the last 20% of the model, which takes 80% of the time and of the GPU cycles, and then we deploy them as services. So teams like Photoshop or Adobe Express or Illustrator, they can call our API. So we have been building the pieces of that. And the first quarter of this year, we just assembled them and deployed them in the cloud. And we do have other internal Adobe systems for container management, like we have a layer on top of the containerization system like EKS or other. We use multiple public clouds, but we had various systems in-house that we were building up that they all partnered to ship Firefly. And again, it was starting from Shantanu, our CEO, and David Wadhwani, the president of digital media, which is in charge of Creative Cloud. They believed in this vision. So we had their full support, and many other functional groups, like from communications, go-to-market, customer support, all of those groups, besides engineering and product and design, helped ship Firefly in a really, really short period of time. But again, because we were building it for a long time.
I mean, one thing I'm struck by in the way you talked about it is obviously, like, it seems like you guys had kind of interesting org structure around this too, right? Where you had kind of a centralized AI team that built some of these services that then, other, products could call. And I think it's a question a lot of people are thinking about now of, like, what is the right way to structure AI teams? Do you kind of embed AI engineers in each product line? Do you kind of build a more horizontal team? I'm curious, like, what you've learned or how you think about that given the work you guys have done.
Yeah, and I would say we're doing both. So we have a horizontal layer, and then we have what we call tech transfer teams in each of the big product lines. And let me detail a little bit what that means. So on the horizontal side, again, Adobe Research is reporting into Eli, into the CTO, and they do have different labs per modality. They have labs for images, for video, for vector, for design, for 3D. And those labs, they do research. They try to publish papers. They try to stay ahead. And also they try to bring these models closer to production, but they're not in charge of productizing them. So this is the research organization. And they do use one of my team, that's the Sensei team. So I have this distributed training platform that is in charge of both enabling researchers and applied researchers to train large models and small models in a multi-tenant environment, and also providing curated high-quality data sets for training. So the Sensei team does both EA training data management and fast training and the distributed training infrastructure. So this is another horizontal that supports the research org. So once these models are ready, they move into the applied, they're ready for pre-production. They move into the applied research org, where they're basically taken in and refined. And in some cases, this means more training. In some cases, it means we change the architecture completely because, again, the world is moving so fast. But there's a lot of work happening in the applied research to prepare those models for productization. And then they move in what we call the GenAI services team, where they create services that run those models in an efficient way. And we do a lot of things for efficient inference. And again, some of the open source technologies that exist these days to enable you to both train efficiently. We're a big PyTorch shop, but PyTorch 2 did help us a lot with various things we did with BF16 data type. So to make use of the many thousands of GPUs we have available, but also on the inference side that we're using many open source technologies and some custom orchestration layers and custom computing layers, in particular on the imaging pre and post processing stack to make those APIs be efficient and fast. We do have, I think our average response time is below 15 seconds for a 1K by 1K image, and we're working on both increasing the quality and increasing the performance. So it's a race against faster compute against quality. So this is the horizontal side of the house. Now in each product line, like the Adobe Photoshop team or Adobe Express team or Adobe Illustrator team, they have what's called again a tech transfer subgroup in that team. So those folks, they know they're applied researchers. They can train their own models using the same infrastructure, but most of the time they will take one of the APIs my team has created and build an amazing user experience around it, because they are the product experts, they're the segment experts, and they know best what is the core workflow that needs AI most. And this is more of the vertical portion. And this is what we've seen works for us best, because there are economies of scale in this horizontals where we do things in a unified way. And how I like to call it, it's an AI superhighway that enables this fast tech transfer to become services. So once that's built, it's very easy for the product teams to basically build workflows on top of those. And of course, it's a internal monorepo. They can submit pull requests and improve this managed model zoo with new models. So we're trying to operate this AI superhighway as a managed model zoo, and we're early in the process, but we're very happy with the early results, and we think it's going to accelerate. Again, this is why we're calling the AI superhighway, accelerate innovation and the transfer towards customers.
It's super cool, and I even like the term tech transfer. I think that kind of captures, what these folks in each vertical are doing. Would love to ask you a little bit about pricing, which is something that's kind of top of mind for a lot of companies as they're introducing AI features. I think Notion came out with Notion AI, and then I think we're charging $20 a month for it, or kind of this additional upcharge for AI features. How have you thought about kind of pricing when it comes to AI, whether that's upcharging or potentially including it as part of the platform? Obviously, there's a huge suite of products that you guys offer, but how have you thought about pricing?
Oh, while I'm not the right person to talk about pricing, what I can tell you is how we're looking at the levers that influence our costs with some of those models. That's maybe not the answer you're looking for, but it's an answer that at least helps understand how we think with these models. So these models are, as you know, big, and they have to run in the cloud. So there will be a cost associated with them. And most of the time, we want to be the best models for content creation across modalities and editing, images, video, vectors, which is something unique to Adobe. As I said, we invented PostScript, which is a vector format, and 3D. So we're gonna invest in all of those modalities, and being the best means the quality of the generated output or the edit needs to be the best. So these are kind of the levers that increase the cost. Bigger models, more billion parameters, bigger encoders to understand the prompts better. So there are a lot of levers to increase the cost by just making the models bigger to generate the best output. On the other side, of course, we're looking into an amazing user experience. So models, they take 60 seconds. Our customers, they don't want to wait 60 seconds. So we need to find the efficient frontier between quality and interactivity. And with higher interactivity also comes lower costs. So all of this equation is complicated. But of course, we're looking at things like distillation, pruning, quantization. There are many techniques that, again, applying various the latest and greatest open source technologies, or even exploring new silicon types that are optimized. We're looking at all of those to keep cost in check, but there is a cost that comes with running some of those models. And again, especially as we're trying to have the best quality. But this is the type of challenge I'm facing within my team, and we hope that and there will be, once we go GA, I'm sure there will be more clarity about how we plan to commercialize it.
Well, I mean, as we sadly come near the end here, I'd be remiss not to ask you. I know it's crazy to predict anything in this space given how fast things are moving, but since we have you on, I thought it would be fun. What do you think the Adobe Creative Suite and this broader space looks like in 5-10 years, just given the space, the pace at which these models are progressing?
Yeah. I just think, and I was listening recently to Clem's podcast too. I realized that we think alike. Actually, I'm a big fan of Hugging Face, and I just think that software companies will become AI companies in the years to come, and they might not call, as Clem said, they might not call themselves AI companies because this is just a new way of software. But we call ourselves a software company for creativity today. So I think my hope is that we will continue to embrace these models. And again, I would say model architectures are going to continue to change from LLMs and diffusion models to many other. The innovation in this space, it's exponential, actually. So we know we never fall in love with a particular model because we're literally shipping it, and then we're probably gonna put it in maintenance and move to the next big generation of model architecture that has 2x quality or performance. So, but I do think that 10 years down the road, by embracing AI throughout the software development process, AI will replace more and more of the software stack and will enable us to enable amazing experiences for our customers in both content creation, editing. And again, I do think AI will enable massive changes in what type of content will be created. Again, I spoke about the exponential need for digital photography content or digital publishing content. I think AI will enable hyper-personalization. This is a big problem we're seeing in enterprises right now, where they have what we call the content velocity or the content supply chain problem. They want to communicate with their customers in a individualized or even by segment way, and it's too expensive or impossible to manage humans to create the content they need. So it's a huge bottleneck in the content creation process. So what we see generative AI enabling is this hyper personalization where both large and small enterprises and actually anybody can tap into to generate infinite content that will be personalized to the viewer. Maybe even, hopefully to the segment of one. So when you visit a website, you will see content created for you. You will see images created for you that speak your language, because we would know, and again, it will be opt-in. We will know how do you prefer information to be served, etc. So we see Creative Cloud evolving into enabling our customers become from visual designers to more like creative directors of these meta experiences that will be then hyper personalizable, and they will again enable brands and small businesses to communicate differently with their constituents. And that's a really big change that I hope will happen. And of course, everything will be human computer interaction will be much more fluid, less convoluted, more accessible to larger audiences. So that's what I hope for Creative Cloud in 5 to 10 years down the road. A more accessible AI at its core, but not even going to be mentioned. A creative suite that will enable content creation with much higher creativity and velocity.
Awesome. Well, I will wrap with a line that I steal from Jacob, which is, I feel like we would be doing a disservice to Adobe AI if we were to keep you any longer. But we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, and thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
It was my pleasure, and I'm going to continue to hear to unsupervised learning. Thank you. To listen to unsupervised learning.